Monday, April 4th, 2022. First item is approval of the agenda.
I have a comment, please. I will make the motion to move to approve striking item number 3, the executive session, the first executive session.
So we have a first by Becca with an amendment of striking the first executive session. Is there a second? Second by Angela. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries 8-1. Next item with the amended agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand or move cover and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 5 is information reports, which in tonight's agenda does not include anything. Item 6 is announcements and praise. I'd like to take a moment in prayer here and praise our Heavenly Father. Sovereign Lord, we thank you for all the blessings we receive. We thank you for this community, the ability to meet. We submit our plans to you. When the spirit of heaviness comes, the answer is you, Lord. We praise you, we rejoice you, and do it for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I got some written notes here. The election is next Tuesday from 7 to 7 down at the community center. There is early voting available here in City Hall up until the 11th, so up till Monday evening. Optimist Easter egg hunt is 2 Saturdays from now at the City Park starting at 10 a.m. Usually ends at about 10 a.m. with 30 seconds. I got this Thursday all day long, the open house at the library for the 100th celebration goes on. So if you get time anytime during the day, come by the library for the celebration there. And Thursday night, we have the Chambers Awards Banquet over at the Loud American, also on Thursday. That is what I have for notes. Anybody have anything to add from council for announcements and praise? Go ahead.
There is an aquatic park fundraiser this Saturday, the 9th. I don't remember what time it starts.
She's trying to find it.
Sturgis Brewery 2, is it 2 to 8?
2 to 9.
2 to 9. Okay, I think you're right. Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Aaron.
you.
Yeah.
Any other additions? Item 7 is wastewater treatment plant update from Rick. Rick has got to do a department head already this year, but many divisions and many important things to talk about. So turn it over to you, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Usually I'm not this early in the meeting. I'm usually towards the end of it, so it's a welcome treat. Friday Daniel asked me, said, hey, could you give an update on where we're at on the wastewater treatment project? And I thought, yeah, no problem. I've already got a presentation. It's about an hour long. I'll dust off the top, knock out the middle, home run. Started looking at it and trying to narrow it down to about 20 minutes. I think I got it down to about 20 minutes of your time. But when I looked at it, it really is surprising and surprising to me. I think that, this project has started over the course of over 6 years ago. 2016 is when we submitted our facility plan to the state. There was a lot of time and energy that went into it even prior to that. So we're looking at a 6-year long project. Several firsts. We're the first MBR plant in the state. First time to use a CMAR delivery process through the state revolving loan fund and through the Board of Natural Resources and Water. First for the city of Sturgis to use a CMAR project. So when I looked at that, probably one of the most overwhelming things too is the complexity of this project, to literally take the dirtiest water you can imagine and turn it into clean drinking water type water. The complexity of that alone, I'm not sure that I can do justice of it in 20 minutes, but I'm certainly going to try. So with that, we'll get started. When we first started looking at this is kind of the outline of the presentation. We had some planning pieces that went into this. Well, maybe. Project design and then construction. And that's kind of what we're going to go through a real high level. Like I said, I did take a lot of parts and pieces out of this. So if you do have some questions, feel free to get with me offline because I did take a lot of the details out of it to just basically give an overview. So when we started this project, we looked at what our existing conditions were. We had a population of about 6,800 people. We had a history of having to do emergency discharges. What those are is when our lagoon system would fill and we would get close to the top of those dikes, we would have to release water on an emergency basis into Bear Butte Creek, basically untreated water. And we would release as much as we could for a short amount of time as possible, and it was considered an emergency discharge. Through our permit, we didn't have the ability to discharge water into the creek or any other waterway. All we could do was treat it, hold it, and then land apply it if the conditions were appropriate. Part of the problem with that was when we looked at doing irrigation in the property that we bought, it was severely affected by the climate. When it was a rainy season, which is when our ponds would fill up the most, we couldn't irrigate anyways because the land that we had to irrigate was too wet. We were also looking at some anticipated and expected growth. However, we couldn't even begin to imagine at the time in 2015 what we're experiencing today in 2022. So really got ahead of the 8 ball in that aspect, and we ended up hitting timing for whatever reason on this project, and over the course of the 6 years, lightning struck a dozen times in the same spot. Also currently, when we started looking at this, when I went over to Public Works and prior to me even going to Public Works, our permit had expired. We have to have a state permit for that facility. It had expired, knowing that the new limits that were going to be put in place on a permit, there was no way with a lagoon system we could ever meet those limits or those requirements. So we wanted to also be proactive in our approach to looking at this. And not only did we want to get into current compliance, we wanted to be able to meet or maybe foresee what those future regulations might be. We also wanted to, whatever we did, we wanted to make sure that all of our adjacent landowners and downstream landowners were happy with the outcome. And that was one of the things that we really battled for decades and decades. And I remember how many times I called Mike and had to let him know as a downstream property owner, hey, we're going to do emergency discharge. A lot of the downstream landowners didn't like that because, again, it wasn't treated water. So we wanted to do something that we could maybe shore up some of those relations. We wanted the best long-term cost effectiveness for the city and for the citizens, and to be in that driver's seat for future growth with some reliable technology that have been proven. So with that in mind, we sat down as a group. Myself, Daniel was involved in it. The infrastructure committee was involved in it, AE2S, and we tried to identify and prioritize the existing areas of concern. One of those first things that we identified was our existing line that went basically from the city park on out to the lagoons, several miles long. It handles the whole town, comes together at that point and goes into one 15-inch pipe. Secondly, we looked at our expired permit on the lagoon system and not being able to meet those new DNR or DANR now EPA requirements, no matter what we were going to do to it. We were going to have to do something different to be able to meet those. And then simply the excessive I&I that we were seeing, which is infiltration and inflow. And that happens due to a number of reasons, old pipes, leaky pipes, where we're basically getting groundwater or sump pumps or all these other outside sources into our sewer lines. So with that, we did submit an application, like I said, in 2016. We submitted an application of facility plan to the DNR to be heard that spring at the Board of Natural Water and Natural Resources meeting. That's pretty typical of any water project we do. They have both a clean side and a they don't call it a dirty side, but a dirty side. And what you do is you're able to get eligible projects on that. And what you can do is a lot of times you receive a really good loan rate for a long extended amount of time. We talk about, traditionally a bank would offer a 20 or 30-year loan. These are 30 and 40-year loans and at a very low interest rate. And then usually there's a little bit of grant money or what they like to call principal forgiveness. So I still remember that day going down to the board, and we go down to the board and it convenes similar to this, and you talk about your community and what the needs are, and then you're pretty much done. And a day later or so, they notify you. And I printed off here. This was the headline of the Rapid City Journal for I believe it was April 17th of 2017. April 19th, sorry. The governor announces $16.647 million for Sturgis wastewater project. Governor Dennis Dugard says the State Board of Water and Natural Resources approved a funding package totaling $16.647 million for the city of Sturgis to make wastewater system improvements. That package includes a $400,000 consolidated water facilities construction program grant and a $16.247 million clean water state revolving loan fund loan. The loan includes $1.6 million of principal forgiveness, which leaves $14.647 million for loan repayment. Loan terms are 2.5% for 30 years. The grant and loan awards will cover the estimated cost of that project. That was almost all of the grant and principal forgiveness that they were allowed. They allow so much each time they meet. And the city, we were fortunate enough to get, we got almost 90% of what they were able to give statewide. So, again, I'm not sure why, but definitely, lightning struck that day. So very, very happy to get that.
Rick, I'm sure that was your glowing personality that won the day.
I assume it was, Aaron. So once we had that funding secured, that's when we really went to work and we started looking at what we needed to do. Again, looking at growth, infrastructure, and then that regulatory component. We knew that we were a town of 6,800 people, and when we looked at this, we anticipated a 1% growth. We thought was very conservative at the time, but thought it was attainable. So we're looking at 8,300 people by 2035. Again, had we been able to look in the crystal ball, we're set up for all of the growth we can handle, but we didn't do it on purpose. Nobody could have ever 6 years ago said that we were going to see the housing boom and the move to western South Dakota that we're experiencing now. So, again, very fortunate that we took that approach and we lined ourselves up to be proactive and to be ready to handle that. So again, some of the things we looked at again was just our current permit, our emergency overflows, the I&I, and then what our new regulations were going to be. The first thing we identified was that phase one of that project was going to be that influent pipe, that pipe that led from the down at the city park out to our current facilities, and that's what really started this whole project. One of the main things was that pipe. We knew it was severely under capacity. When it was put in the late 70s. under an emergency installation, and the existing, it parallels Bear Butte Creek all the way out to our property. And in the late 70s when it flooded, it actually washed that pipe out. And so at that point in time, the city didn't have any means of getting our sewer connected from town to out there. It was basically going down the creek, the raw sewage. So very quick project to get that put back in and get that buttoned up. In doing so, they basically just followed the bank of the creek, and they just built it. There really wasn't time to put plans together to shoot grades. They just thought if we do minimum bury and we put that pipe in, we'll be good. You know, the creek flows downhill, and it worked. It was ended up working really well. Part of the problem is when we, in today's day and age, we can go down there and we camera it and we shoot the grades and things. And what happened is we had, even though it was still gravity fed, we had portions of the pipe that were higher than other portions and created humps and sags, and it still all gravity flowed, but it wasn't correctly aligned in grading. And then again, it was very shallow buried. So that was one of the things that we determined right away was we needed to do something with that pipe. Actually, in 2013, that 15-inch pipe that's currently is still there has a maximum capacity of about 2.4 million gallons a day. And that's at a gravity flow situation. You want to run your pipes about 70 to 80% capacity because they need air to move the water through there. Well, we recorded 3.6 million gallons in 2013, which meant that there was a point in time when we hydraulically had that pipe so full that it became basically a forced main, which is not good, and especially in a gravity flow pipe. Had that been in town and not in the section between town and the lagoons, we probably would have had a lot of angry people because sewer would have started with that pressure, would have went the path of least resistance and would have went into people's homes. So it was a pretty significant thing. And like I said, that we did identify that. So that was one of the first projects that we wanted to do in the phasing of this. And here's just a couple of pictures of that 15. The new main that we put in, it connects right behind just to the north of the football fields by the storage units. And really, we were able to divide our town from everything from that side of the creek and on out to the west, goes into the new pipe, and everything to the south still stays in that existing 15-inch pipe. So we lessened the amount of capacity in that existing pipe, and we put in a series of pipe that went from 18 inches to 24 and then on to 27 inches, or excuse me, 18 to 21 to 24. So we have plenty of capacity for the future. That's one of the lines that we're looking at as we look at the growth that's out north of town on Avalanche. That will be the line that we hook into, and we've got plenty of capacity in that. So we're lucky that we were able to get this project completed. We started it in 2018 and finished in 2019, and Daniel can surely tell you what happened in 2019 because we're still dealing with it. The floods came. And so, again, this pipe follows along the creek, Bear Butte Creek. We crossed the creek several times. So we dealt with, I think, 3 different floods during this project. Good news is that project did complete in August of 2019. The original contract price for that was $1.674 million, and the final contract price was $1.614,134. So we saved, about $60,000 there roughly, which was a good thing. I mean, that's a considerable amount of money in anybody's pocket. Plus, now we had that capacity for future growth, and we also got rid of some I&I reduction in doing that. The next phase of our planned approach was to deal with our expired permit. Again, our permit, the current permit that we had been issued in 2007. We started work on this in 2015. Our permit at the time had expired in 2012. So we were 5 years on an expired permit. DNR was very good to work with. They knew that they didn't want to issue us a new permit that we couldn't meet, and then they would have to fine us. So as long as we were taking proactive steps to remedy the situation, they were very, very good to work with. Funny thing is, we finalized our new permit in 2021. So just goes to show how long sometimes those permitting and dealing with other agencies takes a very, very long time. The other thing that we knew was going to happen is our old permit had a BOD of 30 and a TSS of 110. BOD is the biochemical oxygen demand, which basically is the amount of oxygen that is consumed by bacteria and other microorganisms while they decompose organic matter. It's really is the test line of what we use, the overall degree of organic pollution in water. And the new standard was a 10. You're going to hear me talk about the new 10-10-10 standard a lot. And our old permit, when we're running the ponds and irrigation, it allowed for a BOD of 30 and a TSS, which is the total suspended solids of 110, which is pretty high. We knew that we were never, ever going to see those again. Our current new permit that we have that allows us to discharge into Bearview Creek, again, you'll see that we went from a BOD of 30 down to 10, a TSS from 110 to 10, and the part that the other 10 that we'll see in the near future is that total nitrogen and phosphorus. That'll be our other 10. Our new plant will meet those requirements. So that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we weren't just meeting those current conditions, that we had the ability moving forward to meet whatever the DNR and EPA was going to set forth. Again, you can see just a good chart. 14, we emergency discharge about 112 million gallons. 2015, 135 million gallons. So a lot of water that we were having to do, and it was almost becoming a routine discharge. When I started looking at it, it was within a few days of each other. Every year we were just doing an emergency discharge, and to me, it was looking more routine than it was emergency. So again, that was just something to be aware of, that hey, we need to do something now rather than later. Our current treatment with those lagoons didn't give us any capacity for new development. Again, we had no control over the irrigation or the wet years, and then the potential permit violations that we could have been fined by DNR. We really needed to do something. We couldn't take the do nothing approach. So we looked at a couple of different alternatives. We looked at first, and actually we thought when we originally started moving forward, the Sager system was going to be it. We put a lot of time and energy into the Sager system. We looked at the Sager, the MBR, and the traditional activated sludge. When we weighed those out, though, we did a scoring of that, and we looked at the capital costs, the O&M, ongoing maintenance, operations, meeting the future regulations, the phasing potential, and the footprint size. And really, it was very, very clear that we were headed the wrong direction, and actually the MBR made the most sense, given that it scored 1.7, the Sager a 2.0, and the activated sludge a 2.4. The MBR has the highest removal efficiency, capable of meeting both current and future permit limits. It's got proven technology, and it's a very flexible system. This is the same technology that they actually use in drinking water. This is the same technology that big cities use and actually do convert their wastewater into drinking water. Reclaimed water in Arizona and in Nevada and in California and in cities like Detroit are very, very, very big thing. Actually, I had sent, after we first started this, they did a quick show on the Today Show, or one of them I sent to Daniel, exactly the same system we were doing, and they were reusing their water. It happens a lot of places. We're fortunate enough we don't need to do that, but it does happen a lot of places. So when we started going forward, and I don't even recall, I guess, why we started looking at the different delivery methods, but really we had a traditional design bid build where we hire an engineer, they put together plans, we put it out to bid, and then we take the lowest bidder and they build it. We have design build, which we don't see a lot of, and it generally requires us to do self-perform a lot of the work. And then we had this new thing called a construction manager at risk that we hadn't really used. We were the first municipal agency to use it. However, it had been around a long time in the private workplace. And I guess where it really came to light was when they built the Stage Barn School down in Stage Barn. And I think everybody probably remembers, it made all the headlines in the paper when they turned over, over $1 million back to the school district because they were able to save that money by using that delivery method. And so I think that's probably maybe even what sparked our interest into it. And it's probably not for every project, but for a very complex project, definitely we've saved a lot of money. We've saved hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in what would potentially be change orders, because when we have a guaranteed maximum price through the CMAR, there are no change orders. So I can attest that we have saved a lot of money by using this delivery method. Again, the CMAR, this is one of the first projects. We were one of the first ones. We had to, council at the time had to adopt some ordinances that allowed us to do that. We had to do some paperwork with the state. The state had never done it before, but it was around. Several projects in North Dakota, Minnesota, that were very similar to ours had used it. The DNR was really very open to take a look at it and let us use it. So ended up being a good thing. We were able to, or the council at the time was able to know what this project was going to cost us ahead of time. And, over the course of the last 6 years, I have not been here in front of you once asking for a change order or more money. That's the beauty of it. Any other project, I don't know that we've hardly, I don't know how many projects we've done traditional design bid build, and you can almost guarantee that 10 to 15% of that project you're going to repay in change orders. It's almost a unwritten given. It just so this really was the right project for us. I'm not going to go too far into that. Basically, our goal was to get a high quality project while minimizing the costs. And the contractor really has that same goal. When we did the CMAR, we bring that contractor on at about 30% of plans. We hire and select them, and then they become a part of the design team. So they're really able to look at the project in whole and determine, say, hey, City of Sturgis, hey, engineer, we've built other facilities and we've used this method, and we think it could save us money here using cement versus wood or whatever. But we bring those builders in. A lot of times what we get when we do a design bid build is everything looks great on paper, and then the guy goes to build it and it doesn't quite work out, and he's like, well, I built exactly what was on the plans. Under this delivery method, they have a lot more skin in the game. One example I can share with you is some mixer motors. When they size those mixer motors, they size them. There was a lot of when they sized those had to be kind of guessed on. And when I say that, depending on those total suspended solids and a mixer motor, think of it like a Minn Kota trolling motor. And that motor, depending on the horsepower, will spin in fresh water very, very easily. But the thicker that gets, it will have troubles and it will struggle. And that was one of the things we saw, and nobody can predetermine that because they don't know what's in. I mean, there's a lot of things that determine what the consistency of our sewer water is going to be, and it's different here than what Rapid City would have versus what Minneapolis would have because of the for the most part the manufacturing that's involved. That's what's going to dictate a lot of it is heavy metals, things like that. But anyways, ours weren't quite working up to they were working, but they weren't working 100%. We ended up getting those replaced and done on a traditional job. That would have been a change order without a doubt. And it would have been in excess of $300,000, those three motors. And ours were changed out at no cost because of the CMAR. Basically, the construction manager at risk has to ensure that our plant operates at 100% when it's closed out. So again, I can't speak enough of that delivery method for this project. Worked very, very good. Just some quick keynotes. December 17th of 2018, City Sturgis City Council approved the selection of PKG Skoll as our contractors for the CMAR. Almost a year later to the day, December 16th, which would have been the first Monday a year later, we approved that guaranteed maximum price for our wastewater recovery facility for $14,900,000. So it took us a full year from the time we hired that CMAR. We were designing plans, and they were a part of that. We were trying to figure out what we could do to get us down to that $14.9 million threshold. That's really where we needed to be, or we were going to have to make another tough decision on what to do. January of 2020, construction actually began on that project. This is what we would traditionally see. That's a layout of our plant. It's a 2D. It's very, very difficult. Those plans end up being hundreds and hundreds of pages. This project, we took a little bit different approach, same as we did with the CMAR, and we used a modeling program called Revit. And what that allows us to do is to build this plant, build the plans in 3D, and it really allows us to firsthand walk through the plant and look at things before it's built. And we can look and go, well, geez, why is that pipe there instead of over there? I'm going to walk through the door and hit my head on it. There's a lot of things you'd be surprised that get overlooked on 2D drawings. So here's a picture of one of the buildings in our 3D modeling and actually what it looks like. And it amazes me, how identical they are. I mean, it truly is a unique project that you don't see those plans every day either. That's the first time we've really used 3D modeling. It's the first project we've done of that complexity though too. And it's just amazing how everything built, looks almost identical to what those plans were. Down to the nuts and bolts and everything. Again, on the left, that's the rendering, and on the right is what's out there right now. Pretty amazing project. So what it really comes down to is that clean water. December 1st was the first day. Again, I think I sent an email to Daniel. and the mayor. I don't know if you got yours, Mayor, saying, "Hey, woohoo, we're discharging." And there you can see what the water looks like and what it looks like coming out clean.
Rick, did you have your cup out there to dip it?
I did several times, Aaron, and that water that I feed you when you come over to my office. So no, but man, what a long ways coming to get to that point of getting that clean water. And again, there's several of you on the council who started this project. There's several that are gone. There's some in the audience that participated in it, and to see it come full circle, and again to probably the important factor is that sometimes it takes that continuity. I mean, some projects don't happen in 1 year or 2 year. And so to have that continuity over 6+ years, it'd have been very easy for another council to come in and say, no, we're not doing this. But to have that planning and preparation and continuity, I think, is everybody deserves a pat on the back for that.
Hey, Rick, question for you.
Sure.
When you're talking about the population growth that we've been experiencing here for the last couple of years and continued, any idea in terms of what that population level would be potentially where we start hitting the capacity of that new treatment plant?
We probably won't see it, Aaron. Right now we run at a high time, we run about 700 million gallons a day, and our plant, we can go up to like 2.7 million. So we almost have like threefold of the population right now, which would mean we could literally be a town of 25,000. I don't think we'll ever see that. And then we do still, that's what we're able to do today. We still have one other train that they call it that we could put online and even increase that more. And as you'll see, I'll show you a little bit. I'll revisit this, but we're sitting really, really good. Another thing I wanted to point out was this Big Sky water recovery facility. Again, here's my lightning striking again. You can see that this project went to bid opening of 1/29 of 21, almost a little over 2 years after ours did. It was almost identical in capacity and almost identical in size. Ended up being $37.8 million. And we had those conversations certainly with our CMAR. Had we waited another 30 days, we would have never got that project done for $14.9 million. So again, whatever it was, the stars aligned. We ended up hitting it where we needed to. So just good information. Kind of a little wrap up where we're at today. To date, we've paid $13.8 million of the $14.9. We've roughly got just under $1 million. That's retainage. That's pretty, again, when we're talking $15 million retainage, 10%, 5% is a lot of money. We're currently tracking that we should, at the end of the day, be about $200,000 underneath of our guaranteed maximum price. So again, overall, we're looking at somewhere $250,000 on this whole project, these two phased projects that we did save the taxpayers instead of going the other way and having change orders and expending more money. So good project, man. Plant did start up and we were able to discharge in December of 2021. And we're meeting all of our requirements. I mean, a lot of the things that we're testing for, we're not even monitoring. I mean, the levels are so low, we couldn't have expected them to work any better. So really good project. Final completion, I don't know, June maybe. And when I say that, we're up and running and we're down to that last 5%, and we're just, every day we're getting kicked a little bit. Most of it is in the spare parts. When we put this project together, we made sure that we had up front, we had so many spare parts on the shelf because these aren't items that you run down to Beersbach or whatever, or Dakota Pump, and get pumps and parts. So as a part of our contract, we had to have so many spare parts on site and for us, and that's what we're struggling, getting the spare parts. The mixers that I told you about, those are still on back order. Some of the spare parts are on back order. So we can't close the project out till we receive everything fully, even though the plant basically is done. One of the other things that really keeps us from completing is we have 3 door frames that got damaged when they were installed. And for whatever reason, we ordered those door frames in October, and we still don't even have a ship date on them. So they don't want to paint all the door frame till they can do them all. So we have a little bit of this and that to finish up, but for the most part, like I said, we are done. As soon as the shipping and delivery gets righted back on its feet, I guess we'll close that out. But we'd anticipate probably in the next 30 to 45 days being able to do that. And then having everybody out to our facility for a tour. Much better to do it in 80-degree June weather than 60-mile-an-hour winds tomorrow. So from the conclusion, I guess, the planning, the design, the construction, it all paid off. Was a really good project. The forethought that went into it was fantastic. And again, thank you to both the counselors that are sitting here today and to the ones that have come and gone for having the confidence to do this. It's a big project. Thank you, Mayor, for your support. So this is our plant as of just a week ago. You can see on the left that's what I'm talking about, Aaron. That's called a train. The one that has the dirty water in it, and then you see the 2 next to it that have the really bright blue clear water in it. The only one that we're using right now is that far left one. It's treating all of our water as fast as it comes in. It's shooting it out to the creek as fast as it comes in. So those other 2 trains currently aren't even online. We have the ability to put those online for future growth. And then we have one where those yellow FRP panels are. We have the ability to put in another membrane in one of those is empty. So again, it just, our capacity, we're never in our lifetimes will ever see. I don't see how we could reach full capacity. So with that, I don't know where I was at on my time, probably way too long, but
Excellent, though.
Entertain any questions you have.
Council have any questions for Rick? Very informative for sure.
Do you have a picture of the membranes?
I have, if you come to my office, I have the membranes. You can touch and feel them, and we have a model of them.
Not used ones.
No, we have a model. That was part of the project we threw into the scope, was we wanted some models to show people how they work. And so we have one. A lot of you have been in the office, the one that sits there and bubbles, but I actually have another model, which is that you can touch and feel them and really see what they are.
I would encourage anybody that's interested to stop at Public Works. It's quite a sight.
Yeah, we hope to have, like I said, we're going to have a public open house here as soon as we get everything tidied up. So
And it gets warm.
Yep.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, guys.
Wonderful for sure. Item 8 is city manager's report. So Daniel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing to follow up on from a text that I got here. I think this is an excellent example to bring up of why we have the surcharges in point. Like Rick said, this is a 30-year loan at 2.5% interest. No commercial bank would offer a set commercial rate at 2.5. I know a lot of times people look at their home mortgages and say that's possible, and we're able to receive that. The city gets something that would be a commercial rate, and usually those reset every 5 years. So in this sort of environment where interest rates are continuing to increase and the Fed is saying that they'll increase 7-8 times, the reality that no community would be able to receive a 2.5% interest rate in 5 years is quite true, but we actually have it locked in for 30 years. And in order to do that, we had to have a separate identifiable funding stream, which is that surcharge as part of that. In addition, by going through that process with that surcharge, the city did receive, in essence, $2 million of grants for that. So when it was a total loan for the interceptor line as well as for the wastewater treatment plant of $16.9 million, the actual cost to local ratepayers was $14.9 million. And the reason for that was because the city had passed that surcharge. And so by doing so, that has actually reduced the overall long-term cost of that project for all the ratepayers. So again, that foresight, I think, by the council will end up ultimately saving the ratepayers of Sturgis millions of dollars over the next 3 decades. In addition to that, I was talking with our public information officer, and I do want to note that there was one error that was in the newsletter that went out, and that was in regards to the purchase of the Richards property. The city council has approved purchasing 77 acres for that at $1.4 million. The RFP that went out includes reserving up to 12 acres for the aquatic adventure park. So what is on the website has been corrected. It actually apparently said in the newsletter that it was 12 acres that was being purchased at 1.4. It's actually 77 acres, just to make sure everyone is aware of that. Then under my report, we do have some payroll changes. We have Devin that's returning to our community center department as a custodian. I'm happy to announce that Tammy is going to be our new rally and events director once Jerry retires, so she's here, I imagine, to do a couple of reports today. And then we have our first park seasonal that's starting, and also another custodian. Lastly, we did want to note that the final recommendation from the city attorney's investigation into the election complaint from Sean Natchke is included in here for full transparency purposes. With that, we did want to note that it is possible that one of the signs that was discussed by the candidate, it is possible that it was intruding slightly into the public right-of-way. In order to guarantee that that would happen, we would actually have to do a survey. Given that the sign is not there, it doesn't necessarily make sense to do that because we don't know exactly where the property corner is. But with that being said, when we were looking at that, there were 5 different candidates in a 3-block area that have signs that are within the public right-of-way. So I'd want to remind all candidates that signs should not be in the public right-of-way, that they should be fully on private property. With that, are there any questions?
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Item 9 is consent calendar. Included in that is the minutes from last meeting, some state assistance agreement for me to sign, and then setting a couple public hearings. Does council wish to remove any of the items from consent to discuss individually? How about anybody in the public? Any of the consent calendar items need to be removed?
I move to approve the consent calendar agenda, please.
Got a first by Becca,
Second.
second by Dave. Any last discussion? We'll go ahead and roll call with the minutes being in there. Jason, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Becca?
Yes.
I'm yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Consent calendar passes. Item 10 is approval of the claims. Council comments, questions, concerns on this meeting's claims.
I've got just a couple questions.
Go ahead, Dave.
Maybe I should know what this is, but on page 7, there's a Meade County Auditor, LEC Custodial for $3,000. What is that?
Councilor Forrester maybe could explain that more than anyone, but that's our joint use agreement that we have with the county. The county owns and operates the building. The city essentially leases, I guess, a portion of that. So that's our pro rata portion of the custodial fees.
All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. I guess I did
Yeah,
know
it's
that.
Law
Okay,
Enforcement
okay.
Center. I'm sorry, not
Sure.
LEC, but
All right. Very good. I have one other question, and that was the South Dakota Department of Transportation, same page on down, and probably I should know this too, but the FIMSIS-TRAN, whatever that is. So can you tell me what that is for $4,600?
Should have been a transportation charge.
Rick, that's the DOT's fin system trans. Any idea?
That's for the bike path project, I guess.
Okay, a portion of the bike project, bike trail project that's going from Otter down Vanacker. That's actually being administered by the DOT, and then we get a portion. I think it's 35% or 40% of the bills we actually have to pay for. So they pay it, and then we pay them.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Public input on the bills for tonight. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Oh, is that you, Bonnie? We got a first by Becca.
Second.
We got a second by Dave. Any last discussion on the bills? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. Please note unanimous for the roll call, please, Faye. Item 11 is public hearings. Subset 1 is a variance request, 13 feet versus 30 at 1305 Main Street. I've got Mr. Ainsley's got a staff
I'll do
report
these
here.
for Dave.
Yep.
This item is for the Loud American. They are looking at permanently increasing their kitchen. Those that have kind of paid attention have noticed every year that in the summer they expand their kitchen for the increased traffic that and customers that they end up serving during the summer months. This will help aid them in efficiency throughout the entire year and also allow them to not have to go through that each time. You can see the attachment here where it shows the expansion of the kitchen. It would be a reduction in the setback. But with that being said, given that it's enhancing a local business, it fits within the downtown design guidelines. The Planning and Zoning Commission met and unanimously approved or recommended approval of the variance. Are there any questions?
How about public input on this request for variance? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve this variance request.
Got a first by Aaron,
Second.
second by Dave. Any last discussion here? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Subset 2 is also a request for a variance on a front setback. Mr. Ainsley, I'll turn it back over to you. This is on 4th Street.
1 second. Sorry. Here we go. The request is for a variance on the front setback to allow a new porch roof from the existing home. With this, the property is zoned as medium density residential. They are requesting a 5-foot variance to the 10-foot required front setback, so it would be set back 5 feet. I think it's important to note that that would be 5 feet from the property line, which is actually behind the sidewalk, so it's not actually from the curb. I think sometimes when people hear that it would only be a 5-foot setback, they don't necessarily realize where property lines are. So the property line is actually behind the actual sidewalk itself. And they would like to remove the small shed roof and install instead a 28-foot by 5-foot porch roof over the existing patio. And that would encroach 5 feet into the 10-foot setback. A relaxation of the code can be considered if the use provides a quantifiable benefit to the surrounding neighborhood, and the granting of the variance is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. Given that it would enhance the quality of the house and does not necessarily distract from any of the residents, the Planning Commission reviewed the request and voted to recommend approval of the request. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Daniel. Public input on this request. Public hearing for a request for variance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
First by Dave,
Second.
second by Jason. Any last discussion? Public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed, a no. That variance is granted. Item 11.3 is also a variance request. This is for side setback at 1800 Main Street. Back to you, Mr. Ainsley.
The owners of the property have requested a variance to the front setback. I'm sorry. Wrong one. The owners of the property have requested a 7-foot versus 25-foot setback variance for the highway service zone property that abuts a residential district. The property lies at the intersection of Main Street and 8th Street. The property is approximately 16,000 square feet. It is zoned as highway service, but immediately abuts residential property. The city ordinance states that when a highway service district abuts a residential zoned area, the side yard shall not be less than 25 feet. The point of that is to allow there to be a buffer between potential noises and sounds and smells and other things that might emanate from a commercial use from immediately going into a residential area. Several options have been presented to the city staff. The current site plan is the option that is the least intrusive to the site layout and would allow a 4,000 square foot building on the lot. The property is located on the corner. 8th Street is the primary access for the neighborhood, and businesses located to the southwest of the railroad crossing, so the site triangle must be retained for public safety. That's why there's no requested variance for that corner to ensure that people can safely make the turning movements that are required. The current zoning designation is due to the historical use of the property. A gas station in the 50s and 60s was once located at the 1800 block of Main Street. A September 94 report refers to petroleum contamination due to the leakage of underground storage tanks. Efforts to remedy the contamination by removing the tanks and over excavating the dirt was successful, and the supporting documents are attached. The proposed use is a commercial welding shop. This is considered to be an allowable use within the highway service district, and so the proposed use is not a violation of the zone. Several landowners, however, inside and outside the notification zone have verbally addressed concerns regarding the proposed use of the property, as well as the encroachment or the proposed encroachment on the setback. Written testimony received by the Planning and Zoning Commission has been attached to the report. Since the proposed usage is allowable within the zone, the City Council should consider if the reduction in the setback for a new structure is in harmony with the general purposes of the surrounding uses and would not negatively affect the adjacent property owners or the general public. That was, I think, the one point that was heard loud and clear by the Planning and Zoning Commission, that they believe that the encroachment would have a negative impact on their quiet enjoyment of their homes. This was presented on March 8th to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and with the recommendation to have a setback of not less than 15 feet. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered the information in the packet and also heard a significant amount of testimony from concerned landowners as well as the applicants that are here. After a significant amount of discussion, the Commission said that maintaining the 25-foot setback is necessary to protect the interests of the neighboring landowners and that the setback variance was too much to ask for the new construction. So the Planning Commission recommended denying the variance as presented. And that was, I believe, a unanimous recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I know it was mentioned over and over again by the residents there at the meeting that they meant absolutely no ill will towards the new owners and that they wanted to welcome them to the community, but just the exact location being right next to residents, they were very concerned with its potential use, and then especially if that use would encroach upon that setback even more, that it would just be too large of an impact on that neighborhood. With that being said, are there any questions from the council?
Any questions for Daniel from council? Mike, you're reaching for the microphone. You're good. Questions, comments, concerns by council as a whole, not directed to Mr. Ainsley. Just go ahead.
I guess I would agree with the conclusion, that was reached by planning and zoning. I think they looked this over carefully, so I would go in that direction myself.
With that being said, if there's no other comments, I would move to deny and move to have this property rezoned to residential.
Well, we got a first to deny. We can certainly have a motion on the floor and still have an active discussion. I think the second part of that motion takes a further step. I think your point's made for sure, Mike, but for that process to occur would be a multi-step situation. So
should have happened 20 years ago.
As I understand, listening when I was attended the planning and zoning meeting that talked about this particular project, was that when it comes down to the change of zone, that's not something I think is in our preview. As I understand, that's up to the landowner who owns that property to make the request to change that zone. Is that correct, Daniel?
Correct.
So I guess I would maybe change the motion not to support the planning and zoning's recommendation not to accept the variance, and leave it at that.
Well, I made a comment that that's what I'm thinking, but at the same time, I think we, might be wise to allow some public discussion.
you bet, and that's certainly going to happen. So basically, I want to recap the process which has occurred. We got a first by Mike with an additional motion, basically, which is clarified by an amended motion with Aaron. Is that fair to state that in the process of things that are on the floor? Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Anything else from council at this point in time? Is there a second to? Yep. The first one considers is the amendment. Well, correct. There was no second. Is there a second to this one?
So it was to just remove strike.
There wasn't. The first one died because of lack of a second, basically because of the multi-stage.
Yeah, the motion was to support the planning and zoning's recommendation not to grant the variance on that setback from 25 to 7 feet.
So it's just Aaron.
Just Aaron's is the correct. We have a second by Angela. Any other council input at this time? How about public input at this matter? How about we'll start the landowners? Go ahead, Edson's. Come on up.
My name is Jill Edson. Tim and I are requesting a variance to the side yard setback, as you already know, to construct a building large enough to facilitate inside storage. The size needed to accomplish this won't fit within the current setbacks. Indoor storage will eliminate the possibility of theft, vandalism, and damage from the elements, as well as allow us to maintain a lot tidy in appearance, which addresses one of the neighbors' concerns. To address their other concerns, our business will generate significantly less traffic than a fast food restaurant, convenience store, or any other use allowed in the highway service zoning. The amount of noise will be nowhere near the cement plant or the railroad, and any odor would be minimal. Regardless of whether the neighbors feel that the use would fit within the neighborhood, it does fit within the zoning, as was stated. And while the neighbors welcome bikers during the rally because they contribute to the economy by spending money during that 1 week of the year, keep in mind that our business will add to the city's tax base, both sales and property year-round. It was suggested that we should have done our homework. While it's a great tip, homework was done by the realtor, verifying the size of the lot, the zoning, and ensuring that our use was allowed within that zoning district. Tim did his homework, visiting with the building and planning departments on more than one occasion to check setbacks and discuss different options for size of building and placement of the lot. It was at the meeting with the building department that the sewer on the lot was first brought up. Tim inquired about an easement and was told it would need to be researched and someone would get back with him. No one ever did. The next time we heard about a sewer easement was at the planning meeting when the packet included an aerial photograph of the lot with an overlay of where the sewer easement is located. The next day, I did my own homework, checking in the Register of Deeds office that any property, anything that was recorded on the property. Going back to 1984, there are no easements recorded. I asked the planning department about easement documents that may be located in their office and was told it's more of a right-of-way. Seems to me that a right-of-way would be in our legal description. So I researched recorded documents back to 1933, assessment records back to 1965, and plats, but was unable to find documentation in any record of an easement or a right-of-way in any public document. At the time the lot was purchased, the easement right-of-way, for all intents and purposes, did not exist and still does not. This needs to be rectified. The location of the sewer needs to be marked and easement obtained properly. Given that the planning department's depiction of where the easement should be indicates the entire corner of our lot as well as a portion of the west side of the lot is going to be cut off, this in itself creates a practical difficulty and hardship, depriving us of the reasonable use of the lot. Based on this information, the variance should be granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Questions for the landowners at all? How about other public input?
Just for some clarification, from a variance perspective, I've really focused the motion on the back set, the 25 to 7 foot. I didn't really look at that front part necessarily as much of an issue to me.
And that's the actual request, is that side. Yep. Public input. Come on up, sir. We'll have to have you come to the microphone, please. Here, we got a portable one here, too, we can use. We got to get it so people can hear it on the that are connected.
I'm a little bit slow yet, but under pressure.
Yeah, just have a seat right there, sir, and then use that microphone if you would, please. Thanks.
I lived back there in the alley for well over 20 years. It's narrow. We could hardly get the garbage truck back in there. They make wide turns. If he wants a variance, makes less room. And the snow we get back there from the city streets, the fence ain't gonna hold up to it. And it's just a narrow place. It's pretty private, except for 2 weeks out of here. But it's gonna crowd me quite a bit.
because I go in on the west side and I leave on the east side when I work. Right now I'm not driving because I had a little issue, the peanut sack. But I'm still healing up. But the aggravation that I'm going through right now is, it's not going to be a quiet place. There'll be extra traffic in and out. I don't know. I'm losing it right now. I'm under pressure.
No worries.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yep, good, fine.
but yeah, it's just gonna put a binder on everybody that lives in that alley. Well, me for one thing. There's two other people that live back behind me, but there's just not enough room for a big building and fences. Just I'm kind of lost right now. I'm under pressure. I kind of lose it.
Well, we appreciate your point for sure.
Yeah, but like I say, it's going to be. I live about 150 feet from the A Street in the alley. Tight spot.
Right.
And
Thank you.
I got to sit down.
This is our first meeting. We've had our dial-in capabilities on the phone, so that's the noises you're hearing there. But if people are dialed in, we do have them unmuted, and we're willing to take public comments via the telephone connectivity there. So, but any other public input on this request? We got a first and a second on the floor. Come on up, Wayne.
For the three people in the room that don't know me, my name is Wayne Leto. I live at 1723 Main Street. I sympathize with the landowner, but two wrongs don't make a right. This property has had for 60 years. It was my uncle's property for years and years. He was the one that gave you the right of way to extend the alley out to the viaduct. Why they didn't change it from highway service at that time to residential, I have no idea, but that's what should have been done. When the city sewer went in there, that main needs to be marked and that property needs to be tagged. And at that point, because of what it did to the property, that's when it should have been changed from highway use to residential, because that pinches it down nothing more than a small house. Under code can go in there. But it's one thing to put a house next to a bunch of houses. It's another thing to put a business next to a bunch of houses. How many of you as council members would like me to buy the house next to you and put in a welding shop, an ice cream stand, anything? You didn't buy your house in a noisy industrial park. You bought your house at a residential area, and we did too. And all we're trying to do is protect that residential area and keep it the quiet, safe place to raise kids, place to retire, place to enjoy the city. Don't need the hustle and bustle, the noise. It's not supposed to be there. That's why we have an industrial park out on the west side of town. And I would encourage you to deny the request.
Thanks, Wayne. Any other public input?
Evening, Council. My name is Terry Kessler. I live at 1745 Main Street. I've lived there for over 36 years to begin with. The current zoning at 1800 Main Street is basically a leftover from when that was the road to Deadwood, South Dakota. That's over 60 years ago, first of all. The situation by ordinance requires a 25-foot setback between highway service, as you well know, and residential now. Everybody's going to know this forever. The requirement's there at the very least to protect the integrity of a neighborhood, period. Quite frankly, that's what it's all about. What's requested here is an 18-foot variance, or 72% of the 25 feet required setback. That's how much this is. The response received from the area neighbors in that neighborhood, I'm sure, mirrors what you'd hear from any neighborhood in this town. Doesn't matter, or any future neighborhood in this town. I'm not against commercial, business, or industry, but it must be in an appropriate setting, and this is not it. Residential industry does not belong, or residential and industry do not belong together. It reminds me of what happened when I was on council 2.5, 3 years ago up on Raccoon Road. There was a request for a sanitation porta potty business. And what we heard from those residents is just like what you're hearing now. I would encourage you to please consider what the Planning Commission did. They put a lot of time into this, and I'd like you to honor the ordinance that's on the books, 25-foot setback between highway service and residential. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Any other public input? Any other council discussion? We got a first and a second on the floor to deny the request. With no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. The motion to deny the variance is granted, so is passed, so no variance granted. Brings us to item 12, which is reports. 12.1 is for a statewide planning and research grant. This is for a corridor study. I got Smith down for this also, so I'll turn to you, Mr. Ainsley. And Laura did the heavy lifting on it anyway.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do want to recognize Laura. She did a fantastic job on this. This is a grant application that we successfully received to do a study. I'm trying to get to the actual map for the Junction Avenue corridor to look at existing traffic patterns and to see what are some potential solutions that we can find for it. It is a required 20% funding from the local community. So that would be up to $40,000 from us. We do not have this currently budgeted. We were not anticipating this grant, but with that being said, it's probably going to be more than a year to be completed. It will provide us valuable data that we can use to hopefully apply for future grants to be able to make the improvements that are recommended. And even if we don't use it for future grants, at least have a plan as how best to be able to proceed. It would be a study that would be performed by traffic engineers to be able to truly recommend what is the best way to ensure that the growing amount of traffic is able to safely go through Junction Avenue and make sure that people can get to the daycares, the businesses, and the homes back and forth safely. Here we go. I gave up just a little too soon. It covers several of the intersections in our community that are the most challenging, and then the traffic engineers will look at the one potential realignment that was looked at by our previous city engineer, but also look at several other alignments and other alternatives to see what truly is the best way to proceed and make a recommendation as to what is the best way to move traffic. In addition, I think it's important to note that it won't just look at vehicular traffic. It will also look at pedestrian and bicycle traffic to ensure that people will be able to move from the north side of the community to the south side across the interstate safely, and to determine what is the best resolution for all modes of transportation to be able to move in this corridor of the community. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Daniel. And again, this is just where we're paying partial.
Correct.
The majority, I think, was probably 20/80, isn't it? Is that what it is?
Correct.
Just,
It's
yeah.
20% for the city, 80% for the state.
The corridor study will also show us the proper traffic flows and everything else.
Yes.
I hope we have enough room there for it.
You know, when you look at that spot, you know, part of it down towards where Quick Mark, where the old Four Winds used to be, going up towards Murray Addition, all that new development up in that area. You got all the development up in Vernon Heights off Anna Street. You got the new development that's coming up here on the south side of town with the Davenport. You know, this is really starting to get a busy. You know, I live in that part of town. Anytime you come to that particular street, so it's difficult to get across. You usually have to take a right or take a left, depending on what side you're on. So it would make sense, I think, to kind of do a study, get some insight on that, maybe provide some opportunities later on, too, as we continue that development on this part of town. And kind of, I wouldn't say it's difficult at this point, but the potential exists at some point as we continue to grow. So I would make a motion to approve this motion that Dan just presented.
We got a first by Aaron. We have a second by Becca. Go ahead, Kevin. You got something?
Does it make sense, or are we able to adjust the boundaries of that at all? And I guess what I'm bringing up is maybe extending it south to Pine View.
Oh, to Pine View? We can ask. I'm not sure, but we can definitely ask.
I was just bringing that up for discussion. That I mean, that's the next busy intersection. That
I'm not concerned about doing the study. That's fantastic. I am concerned about the future growth. The amount of cars and people that are going to go through that intersection, I sure would like to see an alternate route out of there to dispel some of the high traffic volume. Where that would go is going to take a DOT study, because it might be coming around the back side of and down on the I have an idea, but I'm not going to go there just now. We'll leave that up. I think we need to stay open and work with DOT on alternatives to that intersection. What that would be, I have an idea, but to put all our cards in that intersection for the next 40 years might be out of place.
Daniel, if I'm understanding this correctly, this study would kind of help us maybe come up with some recommendation alternatives if it looks like it might be. At least it may not come up with on this particular study, but it kind of sets like the first step.
Correct.
To be able to get to the kind of the vision and idea that Mike's coming from.
And so what we did with this grant was to show the work that was done by our previous city attorney, to say here was her suggestion. I'm sorry. Yes. Not our previous city attorney. Our previous. My job. It was her, recommendation with that, but we are saying we would like some professional traffic engineers, not attorneys, to look at it and to come up with some best case scenarios to address the growth that is occurring here, both immediately to the east as well as to all the subdivisions that are occurring to the south, and also to take into consideration the additional commercial growth that's starting to occur along Junction as well as on South Junction that will eventually occur, and then also along Anna Street. So to look at the current traffic patterns as well as what the future traffic patterns will be. And so we're not presupposing that this is going to be the recommendation. It was just saying this was a recommendation that was originally done, but we would like to know what are the best potential solutions.
From traffic engineers.
Correct. And then after that, there will be, I'm sure, several community meetings to discuss it, to get people's insight. It'll probably take about a year, year and a half, and then they'll come back and say, here's, the recommended solutions.
Real quick, just to for somebody that's newer like me and on council, what was the last intersection that maybe had a study like this done and then was adjusted?
It's before my time, Dean.
Yeah, I don't
Sorry.
think we've ever.
Okay.
And we've made multiple lists of these kind of troublesome intersections for sure. And I think Rick's. On 14A, right? Moose and 14A.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, DOT is doing a complete corridor study of all of Lizelle, and they're looking at several intersections along Lizelle.
Right.
So there are several studies going on right now of numerous intersections with Lizelle throughout our town.
Public questions, comments, concerns. We have a first and a second on the floor. Deb, what do you have, ma'am? Well, this intersection is more than just one intersection. It's basically from exit 32 on and off ramps all the way to Ballpark Road is what the area entails. Yeah,
just
I'll
past south of Harmon Street.
Yeah.
Avenue from the hospital south all the way down to,
hopefully Pine,
past the interstate to
Dixon.
Dixon. Yeah.
Dixon.
Yeah.
Dixon and Otter.
Yep.
Well, I have a comment. I mean, I'll say that, when we talked about redoing the Anna Street intersection, I was not really in support of that. But I think that you fast forward, because that was 3.5 years ago. You fast forward to where we are now, and you're seeing the development happen down past Scott Peterson and a potential development coming online across from there. I think that this is our due diligence, just to have the traffic planners look at this and see what other possibilities that can exist here. I think that it's important that, was it Mike who said that we keep an open mind, because I think we all know from driving that section every day that Harmon Street, Anna Street, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to come onto Junction Avenue from those streets. So I think this is a good idea, and I just want to thank the city staff for putting this together and allowing the town to have state funds be the major funding stream for this.
Thanks, Becca. Any other input? Public or council? We got a first and a second on the floor. No additional comments being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Item 12.2. This is first reading of Title II. We had some discussion last meeting on this, and Eric's done his due diligence, and we'll have you bring it from here, sir, for first reading. Turn it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As just a quick note, I had a question regarding this, but if you look at the marked up version of the proposed revisions, there are multiple different colors involved in that. A lot of those, the red and the green, primarily stem from prior revisions, prior meetings, back to, I think, even up to 2020, if not even farther back. The most recent revisions are in blue, so just to provide some clarification if necessary on that. From the discussion from the last council meeting to now, there's been a series of additional revisions. They primarily stem to, one of them is to add public works to the stop work orders. This is because there are occasionally public work projects that involve different various inspections and permits. This way it enables, if Public Works or any of their staff see a significant issue happening, they can address it and stop work until it's resolved. Second is like section 2.03.15, there was some discussion on adding language dimensional 2x4 rather than just standard 2x4. This was added to reflect more industry language and ensure that it's not a strict 2x4, it's kind of what the industry standard 2x4 is, dimensions. Another proposed revision is adding language to the landscaping contractor to exempt nonprofit organizations, volunteer organizations, and individual volunteers from the necessity to obtain a contractor permit. This allows various nonprofit groups to go out and work on trails, work on projects, and it kind of opens the door for various nonprofit work throughout the city. One of the primary revisions is the prior revisions had a minimum of $300 for building permits. That's been eliminated. And then the proposed revisions in this first reading actually increased that minimum valuation to $701 rather than the current $501. So the objective is try to mirror the increase in construction prices and essentially try to decrease the amount of regulation. Another significant revision is to add additional exceptions to the Berm building permit requirement. These additions were in response to working with both Dave and Karina in the building inspector and the planning and permitting department. And also they had different contact with various contractors that worked within the city and getting feedback on what exceptions they would like to see too. A lot of these exceptions are just in general trying to focus more on the requirement for a building permit for any potential structural changes, while adding exceptions to anything like finishing work, countertops, flooring, and allowing for minor deck repair, minor siding repairs, door repairs, adding an exception for residential exterior door as long as it's the same size, so you can change out an exterior door without the necessity of a permit, but as long as the dimensions of the door are the same, you're not messing with anything structural. Adding a residential use playground equipment, that way people can put up playground equipments in the yard or various swings without the necessity of a permit. One of the primary additions is a broad discretionary exception that provides planning and permitting and the building inspector additional ability to make an on-site decision on whether or not a permit is necessary. So if somebody is, say, replacing a window or something like that, where it provides, rather than having a large enumerated list of exceptions in the code, this provides the planning and building department discretion to make that decision on whether or not a permit is required. And that generally sums up a lot of the exceptions. One of the additional exceptions is adding bathroom fixtures, so if you can change a toilet, vanity, things of that sort without the necessity of a building permit. And then one additional revision is to because the prior version had labor costs for home builders, or not home builders, but homeowners doing their own construction work or repairs. Their labor costs would generally be calculated into the building permit. In this version, that's been removed. It just seems that trying to figure out the building or the labor costs for property or owners is a little too difficult and cumbersome, and it simplifies the process for homeowners that want to do their own work. So it's primarily only looking at construction costs when valuing building permits for homeowners. However, the current process is that if there's contractors, their labor costs are generally calculated into the building permit valuation, and that would continue on. There are additional revisions that were noted in the prior in the discussion that rolled over into this version, and I can go through those if you would like. Otherwise, I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Eric from council? I think in the discussion process, your revisions for first reading reflects my recollection of what was discussed for sure. I think it makes sense to reiterate that with the landscaping one, the lawn mowing businesses and those things are exempted too. That's correct where we landed, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yep.
the lawnmower business is
Yep.
still included.
I do have one comment, not a question, just thanks, Eric, for everything that you've been doing. You know, I've talked to you a few times in your office here the last month or so, and rolling your sleeves up and getting into all the information. You know, I think this ordinance process is a good example of the collaboration, you know, or the work that you're doing, getting feedback from the council, getting feedback from the public, trying to have ordinances that are more clear, less intrusive to the people, makes more sense, you know, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and as you continue with this collaboration on trying to improve our ordinances for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Go ahead, Mike.
This might be one of the last times that some of us get the opportunity to discuss these type of ordinances. For the council that remains, be advised that we need to be conscious of the international building codes. And we have a big problem in this town with Main Street and buildings not being occupied year-round. The new International Building Code would lend to fix that issue by having to bring those buildings up to code, and it's going to take a significant amount of money and a significant amount of work. I'm hoping it would spur those owners to have full-time residents in those buildings year-round. So be advised, it's a lot of work. Try and read that 7-inch book and see what you can do with the new International Building Code. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other council comments, questions, concerns? This is first reading of contracting part of Title II. How about public input on this process? I guess to reiterate the process of which we go through to change our ordinances, something we've done for quite a while now. State law requires that there's a first reading, a second reading, and then 20 days after it's posted in the legal newspaper for it to become a law. If it's not referred in that time, it becomes a law, becomes our state or our city ordinance. In addition to that process laid out in state law, there's the process that we've included as an actual discussion prior to the first reading where a lot of these changes came from. So just a spot where input is taken, as Aaron said, from all people involved, and just helps with the process as we move forward and bring a better product to first reading. Is there a first?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would move to approve the first reading of Title II.
Got a first by Becca.
Second.
Got a second by Dean. Any last discussion, public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. This is an ordinance, so we'll call it unanimous for a roll call, Faye. Thank you. Thanks, Eric. We will tackle second reading at a meeting in the near future. Item 13 is other matters that may come for the council. An opportunity for non-agenda items to be brought up briefly. I'll turn it over to council members first. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, just a quick update on the adventure park. The Infrastructure Action Committee, we met about 10 days ago with the city staff, Daniel, Rick, Rod, Dave Smith, Eric was a part of that, and then the 4 council members. So we did a deep dive on the construction and capital cost. Did another deep dive on the business plan, looking at the cost and the revenue. One of the ideas that Rick had was, in that CRS pamphlet that we received, there are other communities that have established these man-made lakes over the last several years. Daniel has set up, we have 3 phone calls this week with those 3 of those communities starting tomorrow to ask questions, have an understanding how things went. Were there any surprises, what they would do differently, understand maybe the maintenance cost or at least the maintenance issues and those type of things. So I think once we get done with these phone calls, we have another infrastructure meeting next week on the 14th. We probably could come back and do an actual official report where we're at when it comes down to the adventure park. One of the questions I was just, not really for discussion right now, but throw it out to all the council, and this is something that we discussed at the infrastructure committee, is that we have a policy decision to make between us when it comes down to a business plan. Do we want this proposed adventure park to be something that's more focused on a lifestyle for the community, the people that live in our community, on one complete end, which would be completely free and have to cash flow it some other way, or is it more revenue neutral in terms of what the operating maintenance cost versus the revenue? So again, just something to start thinking about. Maybe the next council meeting, when I do the report, we can have a little bit more discussion where we sit on that, and in terms of maybe what our options are, depending on where we're at on that continuum. So, getting your questions.
Yep. Okay. And infrastructure's hard work on that as we move forward and process more information. Anything else from council?
I'd like to point out the video that the finance office made on the election process and how that goes from the petition to the counting of the ballots, and I think that's a good 10 minutes.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Faye, for that. Anything else from council? How about anybody in the public? Non-agenda items. Anybody on the telephone connectivity tonight? Maiden voyage.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Beck.
Yes, well, I see Veronica's here in the audience from the chamber, and I just want to say thank you for providing the opportunity for the candidates in the upcoming city election to be a part of the forum that you all put on. I think it was a very good benefit for our citizens, so thank you.
Any other matters on 4-4? With our new agenda, we do start at 6:30 now, so that is a change, but that does leave executive session to its entirety tonight. So is there a motion from council for exec?
I make a motion to go into exec.
Got a first by Aaron.
Second.
Second by Dave. Obviously no action because there's no agenda item afterwards. Any actions that may occur on anything discussed would be publicly on the agenda item and on future meetings. So all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. We're off to exec. It's 8:14. We'll actually start it, we'll say at 8:20. Thank you. Yep. Well, body.